Eternal Health, episode number 27.
You're listening to the Eternal Health Podcast, where we discuss God's great design for your life in body, mind, and spirit. Your host is Laura Rimmer, who's a nutritionist, author, speaker, and health coach. Looking for yoga tips or the latest protein shake recommendations? Sorry, you're in the wrong place. If you're ready for no-nonsense, multi-layered health expertise drawing on evidence-based nutrition and biblical principles, welcome to Eternal Health. For show notes and to download your free 5-minute Optimum Health Scorecard, please visit laurarimmer.com. Enjoy the show.
Hi there, it's Laura Rimmer. Welcome back to another episode of Eternal Health. This week is called Alkaline 5 Diet Addendum, What I Would Change About My Book. So I wrote the book, The Alkaline 5 Diet, a few years ago, and this is an addendum. So if you've got a copy of my book, or if you plan on buying my book, then this is what I would add. If I was to go back to my publisher and ask them to do a second edit, a second edition, or a rewrite, or if I could add something in, this would be it. So rather than going through that whole process, I may well do that in the future, I don't know. But this is an add-on, so it's the addendum to my book, The Alkaline 5 Diet. So before we get into that, just to say, I've had a really enjoyable week. Quite a lot of work going on, and I tell you what, it's nice to see some better weather here in the UK, and that has brought out a lot of birds. So I've had a lot of birds hanging around our garden this week, which has been really lovely. My husband's dad made us a bird table, and so we've put that out in our back garden, and it's really nice to see we've had a wood pigeon coming down every day. We've got starlings and sparrows, loads of sparrows. Blue tits, they're my favourite, really cute little blue tits. What else have we had? A big seagull descended into our garden the other day and almost knocked over the bird table. But yeah, it's lovely to see the birds outside. And in our front garden, because we've got kind of thistles in the front garden, the goldfinches are back, which are so lovely. They're so pretty, little goldfinches, aren't they? And also I'm budgie sitting again, so my sweet little friend Budgie is back, but I've put him outside in the kitchen because he makes too much noise when I'm recording these podcasts. Now, if you haven't listened to last week's episode yet, then I would encourage you to go and do that when you've listened to this one, because it was all about, episode number 26, all about type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes and metabolic syndrome. So the causes, symptoms and diet associated with in the diet that you want to be following to avoid those things. As I mentioned in that podcast, a huge amount of people are walking around with pre-diabetes and metabolic syndrome, which are the precursors to type 2 diabetes, and are unaware of it. And that's a time bomb. Within 5 years, it's been shown in evidence-based research that if left unchecked, that will result in full-blown type 2 diabetes. So go and listen to that. It's an important episode, important topic that I discuss. So this episode number 27, as I say, is about my book, The Alkaline 5 Diet, and is an addendum to that book. So the title is What I Would Change About My Book. So I wrote this book, The Alkaline 5 Diet, in 2013, and it was published all around the world by publisher Hay House in 2015. It came out on Easter Day 2015, and it's all about embracing more alkaline forming foods to work in harmony with your body's blood alkalinity. So it's about cutting down on harmful toxins, things like sugar, vegetable oils, refined and processed foods, chemical laden foods, GMOs, and with a focus on eating chlorophyll-rich leafy greens, lots of vegetables and other fibre-rich foods. So that book has it's helped a lot of people. I've got some great testimonials, both written and in-person testimonials and video testimonials, from people saying that it's reversed their high blood pressure. They followed this diet and it's reversed high blood pressure, given them more mental clarity, resulted in easy weight loss. So people regularly message me and say, I've lost 10 pounds, I've lost 15 pounds. One lady I worked with and coached her through the principles of this diet lost 45 pounds. Another woman I worked with got rid of her acne following this diet. It results in huge amounts of energy if you follow it do the 21 days, and things like great sleep as well you can have by following this diet. So there's a 7-point framework for optimum health and healing in this book that I wrote, and I apply that framework in my own life every day as far as I can. I try to follow the principles of this framework every single day, and I absolutely think that they stand and they're good maxims to be living our life by. And I've been coaching on that 7-point framework for 10 years and having great results with my coaching clients. So I followed this way of eating outlined in the Alkaline 5 diet, and it's called the Alkaline 5 diet because there are 5 main meals that I promote that we eat each day in the book. I followed this way of eating for around 8 years, and myself, I got great results. But here's the thing, I wrote this book when I was doing a lot of marathons. So between 2013 and 14, I ran 12 marathons, and also that included 2 ultramarathon distances, 1 ultramarathon race of 32 miles. So I was doing a lot of training, a lot of cardiovascular endurance work, running hours and hours at a time. And obviously this shaped my outlook, and it shaped what I was writing in that book as well. So 5 years on, I now have the hindsight of firstly having feedback from lots and lots of people around the world and what they say about how they find following the diet, number 1. Number 2, I have the perspective of been doing this myself for a long time, but also now I've taken a real step back in my endurance training. I'm no longer at this point in time running lots of marathons and things, so I'm able to see what the diet does to us or does to me as someone who exercises moderately as opposed to excessively. I also have 5 years of extra research knowledge, speaking to doctors, reading materials, and just growth in my own practice and my own research knowledge. And so with all this in mind, there are a few key changes that I would make to the protocol in the Alkaline 5 diet. So let me outline to you exactly what I would change about what I've said in the book, The Alkaline 5 Diet, bearing all things in mind. So the fact that it's still got a lot of great principles in it, but there are a few tweaks and changes that I would make that if you have a copy of the book or plan to get a copy of the book, I would bear these things in mind. So firstly, I say that you can do this diet for 21 days or 21 years. And in the book, there is a 21-day meal plan. Now, doing this for that 3-week period is great. And I would say, absolutely, if you follow that plan for 21 days, then that is a great way to detox your body, to cleanse, to reset things, to reset your digestion. And many people will thrive following that 21-day diet. However, I would not say to follow this exact plan for 21 years. Why? Well, because I feel there's a need to reintroduce some other key foods, things like probiotic fermented foods for great gut health, and some good fats, high quality nourishing animal products for great nutrients, which are just hard to find on a plant only or a vegan diet. So vitamins like B12, which anyone who's a vegan or eating plant-based will know, I need to supplement with vitamin B12, but there's also other nutrients that are very hard to get enough of through a purely plant-based diet, which I outline in the book. So vitamins like vitamin K2, D3, and then your other fat-soluble vitamins like A and E. The other thing is that the carbohydrates, I believe now, are too high in this diet. So unless you are doing competitive sporting events, unless you're really doing a lot of endurance training or explosive anaerobic training, sprinting, that kind of stuff, then there's just too many carbs in this diet. Now, if you are fat adapted, then you don't need this level of carbohydrates, even if you are doing sporting events. But that's a topic for another show. I'll explain what being fat adapted is at another time. But I would say there's too many carbs in this diet unless you are doing competitive events like marathons and things like that. So to be clear on this, I no longer advocate a high carb, low fat, plant-based vegan diet over the long term. That's the premise of this book. And as I say, for 21 days, that is great. And you'll probably get some wonderful results following that. But over the long term, I do not promote a plant-based vegan diet, and I do not promote any more high carb, low fat, but rather a low carb, high fat diet. So why the switch? Why have I changed my view on this? Well, quite simply, I'm not someone who's dogmatic in my views. If some new information comes to my attention and makes me think that, okay, I was either wrong on this or my viewpoint needs adjusting, then I'm quite happy to do that. I think researchers and people who are saying things publicly should be able to, in humility, admit when they had something wrong. Because otherwise there's a degree of a lack of integrity, and we're not holding our audience's welfare and benefits in highest regard. So I was wrong on that viewpoint that high carbohydrate is best. In the last few years, I've discovered the works of notable researchers and doctors like Gary Taubes, Nina Teicholz, Tim Noakes, all writing on the benefits of saturated fats. Now, I was wrong on this quite simply because the vegetable oil industry spends billions of dollars on advocating the fact that they have these heart-healthy products like margarines, and they are better for our health, and that high cholesterol is a bad thing, and saturated fat promotes heart disease and high cholesterol. That is an erroneous viewpoint. Now, you might think that that's a true viewpoint. You might think that what I'm saying now, it sounds ludicrous, but there are books out there, there's research being done which shows that this is a big convoluted area that is being hidden from the public, and the public's being misinformed about, whereas actually saturated fats are good. So as soon as I found that out, as soon as I was convinced on this point, I had to change my viewpoint, because the whole basis of me saying get rid of animal fats, get rid of saturated fats for the most part, apart from things like coconut oil, which I've always known has been good, the basis of me saying that had gone from underneath my feet. The rug had been pulled out. So that led me to look into, okay, if saturated fats are back on the table, so to speak, then does that mean that there's a distinction between conventional meat and dairy and high quality grass-fed organic meat and dairy? And I discovered, yes, there is. So that was the main reasoning behind my change. Also, I explain more on this about why I switched from a high carb, low fat diet to a low carb, high fat diet with the reintroduction of some animal products in my controversial episode of Eternal Health, which was episode number 25, which caused a furore amongst vegans and plant-based dieters, saying that I'm wrong, I'm a bad person, whatever else. But anyway, you listen to it and make your own views. But that's in episode 25. So other people who I closely have learnt from in the last few years, the Weston A. Price Foundation, headed up by Sally Fallon Morell, Dr. Stephen Finney, Dr. Jeff Volek, Dr. Robert Lustig, all who speak on two things really, fat and sugar, and about how sugar and high carbohydrate foods have a really negative effect and impact on our blood sugar and insulin levels, and the right types of fats, saturated animal fats, believe it or not, are actually heart healthy. They promote great health. So that's my reasoning for changing. So what's the upshot? Saturated fat is good. Too many carbs in all forms is bad, because our body struggles, especially with things like fructose. Fruit is okay in small proportions, but not too much. And certainly if we have refined fructose, so things like high fructose corn syrup, that's a recipe for disaster. Not that that was advocated in my book, but I'm just extrapolating out the the extremes here. So to end on this point that I said in the book, carbohydrates, high carb diet is better. I also say on page 23 of the book that a ketogenic diet is not good. I would change that. A ketogenic diet, which is low carb, high fat, can be very beneficial for health, but I still stand by what I say about high protein diets. High protein diets aren't good either. So the sweet spot of dietary macros, if you like, macronutrients, protein, carb and fat, is higher fat, moderate to low protein and moderate to low carbohydrate. Okay, so let's move on to the 5 meals that I mention in my book. So the 5 meals are a blood cleanser, a vitamin vitality meal, a fat loss sugar meal, a raw alkaline mineral meal, and a hearty cooked fibre meal. So those are the 5 meals in the Alkaline 5 diet. So let's go through them one by one, and I'll explain briefly how I would change these slightly or a lot. Okay, so the first one is the blood cleanser. Quite simply, that stays absolutely the same. So that's your wheatgrass juice, your lemon juice first thing in the morning. That is a wonderful thing to have first thing in the morning to set your day up for great energy, great health. So that stays the same. The vitamin vitality meal, I said that this should be 15% of your daily calories, and this is your fruit meal. So things like juicy fruit, oranges, apples, pineapple, those types of things, melons. Now, I would amend that. I would say rather than having lots and lots and lots of fruit, or 15% of your calories, I'd recommend 1 piece of fruit per day. So this instead represents around about 5% of your calories. So I still absolutely recommend green smoothies. I have one of those pretty much every day. My husband has one every day, just with less fruit. And I also think that we shouldn't be having fruit juices. So if you're going to juice, or if you're going to refine your fruits or process your fruits, have smoothies rather than juices. And I advocate very much smoothies in the book over juices anyway. But you don't want to be having things like orange juice. It's too concentrated a form of fructose. Fructose causes major problems in our body. It doesn't cause a huge insulin response, but it nonetheless causes big problems in the body. Again, that's a whole other topic for another episode, but you can look to the work of Dr. Robert Lustig if you want to look at this further at this point. So a vitamin vitality meal, in the book I mentioned that this is a great strategy to overcome unhealthy sugar cravings. So I say in the book, if you're craving chocolate, have a piece of fruit. If you're craving ice cream, have a piece of fruit. If you want cakes or donuts, have a piece of fruit instead, because it will satisfy that sweet tooth and those cravings that you have. And I still stand by that. So obviously choosing a banana or an apple or a slice of melon or some pineapple or some oranges or grapefruits or whatever is much more healthy than donuts fried in vegetable or hydrogenated white refined sugar, refined flour. So yeah, common health sense would say that eating a piece of fruit is better than donuts and cakes. So still, if you're looking to transition from a standard Western diet that is very heavy in the processed foods, refined sugars, for sure, go for pieces of fruit instead of those things. But ultimately, as we improve our diet and move along the path of optimum health and optimum diet, then we want to be reducing those pieces of fruit to around about 5% of our calories per day. The next meal is your fat loss sugar meal. Now, I wrote this as somewhat facetiously in my book because there was a big, at the time, bulk against sugar. I Quit Sugar came out, I think, around about that time, the book. And my viewpoint at the time was, look, I'm running marathons and dates and bananas are fueling me. I know that when I get to 18 miles, 20 miles and I'm about to hit the wall, a couple of dates, a banana or two boosts my energy no end, and I'm able to run again for another 10 miles. So again, if you're doing a lot of hard exercise and you're not fat adapted, if you're doing marathons, if you're exercising intently every day, or in long periods of time, for sure this meal is going to be really good for you, a fat loss sugar meal of bananas and dates. But for the average person, then I would say don't have 70% of your calories from the fat loss sugar meal. In the book I say have between 10 and 70%. I would now say 10% max should be from things like bananas and dates, dense fruits, which is around about 200 calories a day or less. Why? Because it's better to be burning fat than relying on carbohydrates all of the time. Having too many of these carbohydrates, as I've mentioned, produces a spike in blood sugar and an insulin response. The only exception being if you're doing a lot of exercise. So instead of lots and lots of bananas and dates, I would recommend avocados and coconut instead. So similar kind of consistency, similar in their calorific value, but much higher in fats, much lower in carbohydrates. So avocados and coconuts and some nuts and seeds are wonderful instead of all of that fat loss sugar meal. The next meal is your raw alkaline mineral meal, and I recommended in the book that should be 5% of your calories. I would up this to 10 to 15%. So these include, or this meal can include steamed and non-starchy greens and veg, as well as in the book I mentioned raw vegetables, so raw leafy greens, spinach, kale, broccoli, cruciferous vegetables, those type of things. So that I believe should be higher than 5%. So 10 to 15% calories is great. That means that you're getting all of your potassium that you need in a day. Most people are so potassium deficient. We need 3,000 to 4,700 milligrams of potassium per day. Eating lots of kale and leafy greens will help that. It also is rich in lots of antioxidants and vitamin C and various other things, calcium. So yeah, 5% is too low. 10 to 15% leafy greens and veg is better. Moving on to your final meal, the hearty cooked fibre meal. And this was the meal that I said should be from starches and whole grains. So things like potatoes, rice, corn, pasta. And having studied the work of people like Dr. John McDougall and Neil Barnard, then this made a lot of sense to add this in. But I said between 10 and 70% of your calories should be from this meal. Knowing what I know now from all the fat researchers, all those guys, and people like Timothy Noakes, who've also switched their view from high carb, low fat to low carb, high fat, I would say 10% max of your calories should be from a hearty cooked fibre meal. So again, around about 200 calories per day or less. So with these 5 meals, before all these 5 meals added up to 100% of your daily calories, now if you tot up my revised proportions, it only adds up to about 35 to 40% of your daily calories. So where should the rest of your calories come from, you might wonder? Well, they should come from daily probiotic and lacto-fermented foods. And I'll do another show at some point soon on that. So yeah, these foods which are going to restore your gut microbiome. It's going to prevent and help things like leaky gut, Crohn's disease. It also has a great effect on your psychological well-being by restoring your gut. So foods that are in this category are things like sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, kefir, raw dairy, those types of things. So we want to be including some of those foods each day, not a huge amount, but maybe a little bit at each meal. And then the other things, so the majority of your calories should be coming from high quality fatty foods. So things like pasture raised, organic meats, dairy. If you can get raw dairy, go for it, great, because then you've got all the spectrum of probiotics and nutrients which haven't been pasteurized away. Eggs, so free range eggs, wild caught fish, and then other plant-based fats such as avocado, nuts and seeds. So those are the main changes that I would make to my book, The Alkaline 5 Diet. And just to relate these to the 12 diet principles that I now advocate, and I outlined those in episode number 25 of Eternal Health, so do go and listen to that at some point. Only 3 of those 12 principles represent any change compared to what I've put in my book. So all of the food things that I say not to eat, so I call these the no list. You've got the no list and the go list, so things not to eat and things do go and eat. So all the things on the no list stays the same. So no white refined sugar, no vegetable oils of any kind, no GMOs, no soy, no pesticides, chemicals or hormones, no pork or shellfish, and no or low gluten. So that all stays the same. The only things that have changed in those 12 diet principles, the only things that have changed that are new in my 12 diet principles are 2 of the 5 things on the go list. So go and do, go and eat. And they are daily probiotic and lacto-fermented foods to eat. Second thing being daily high quality meats, fish, eggs or dairy foods, and they have to be organic and pasture fed. So that's on the go list. And then the third thing is to keep carbs fairly low. So I recommend between 25 grams and 200 grams of carbs daily. So keep the carbs low and the good fats high, especially saturated animal fats. So those are the only things that have changed, those 3 things. So let's wrap up. What are the benefits of these changes that I've made since writing the Alkaline 5 diet? Well, the benefits of embracing a more high-fat, lower carbohydrate diet and making these tweaks to the 5 meal plans that I advocate will result in the following: accelerated fat loss, burning more body fat than dietary carbohydrates, because think about it, it makes more sense. We've got a lot of body fat on our bodies and only a limited amount of dietary carbohydrate that we can store in our bodies at any one time in the form of glycogen. So it makes sense to be more fuel efficient by burning body fat as necessary than just relying on carbohydrates. You eat less, and that's one of the things that people kept saying to me, feedback from the book, there's a lot of food, too much food to eat, which, is quite a nice problem to have, having too much food to eat. But this diet will mean that you eat less volume, but more decadent, more satisfying food. So things like butter, full fat cream, if you want it, whole fat milk and yogurts, meat that is not skinless, fatless, meat with the fat on, lamb joints and things like that, really tasty foods. It also means that you don't have to go vegan. The majority of people that I speak to and have bought my book say that they don't want to go completely vegan. So meat and dairy are perfectly acceptable as long as it's well sourced and is high quality. So pasture raised, organic meat and dairy. This way of eating will regulate your 2 hunger and satiety hormones, ghrelin and leptin. So the hormone ghrelin says, I'm hungry, eat, and the hormone leptin says, I've had enough, stop. So it will make sure that those 2 are still working really, really well. This way of eating will also stabilize your blood sugar and prevent insulin resistance. So in episode 26, I talked about type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance. So there's more details on that in there, but just to say that this way of eating will prevent these big blood sugar spikes and insulin responses. So the final point I want to make really is that in my book, the majority of the book talks about a 7-point framework and goes through the various aspects of this 7-point framework for optimum health, healing and weight loss. And to say that everything in that framework, so things like getting good sleep and balancing rest, having a positive mindset and good emotions, eliminating acidic toxins around the home, all those things stay absolutely exactly the same. I've been coaching on this framework for 10 years. It works really well. If you want to have a copy of that framework, I will leave it in the show notes at laurarimmer.com/EH027. So let's round up then. Let's do a recap and conclusion here. So the Alkaline 5 diet, as I have written it and as is in the book that you can buy, that is a great diet to help you eliminate refined sugar, eliminate toxic vegetable oils, genetically modified foods, fast foods and processed foods. So if you're looking to do any of those things, this is a great book to get to help you do that. And let's be honest, those are the top problems that we have in our diet and with our society and our society's health in this day and age. And those are the things that cause degenerative disease, and getting rid of those things are the things that is going to promote great health and the reversal of disease. So sugar, vegetable oils, GMO foods, fast foods, processed foods. So if you're looking to make some positive changes there, my book, The Alkaline 5 Diet, is a surefire way to be able to do that. This way of eating can be thought of as a detox plan for sure. So if you're looking to do a detox or a cleanse, Alkaline 5 Diet will help you do that. So you can do this diet for 21 days up to a few months, and you will expect to see some good results in those 21 days. You can lose weight, you can improve your skin, digestion, increase energy levels on this diet, and ease certain health conditions. So I have many written and video testimonials to show that people who've reversed high blood pressure, have better mental clarity, lost weight, got rid of acne, had much better energy, reduced Crohn's disease and things like that. But at some point you want to move on to adding restoring, nourishing and feeding foods. So these are the protocols I coach on now. So adding in, as well as these cleansing foods, restoring gut healthy foods, probiotic foods, nourishing animal products, and fats, high quality fats that are going to feed you over the long term. So the diet I recommend long term is no longer high carb, low fat, but is high fat, lower carbohydrate for optimum health, stabilizing blood sugar and preventing and reversing metabolic disease and insulin resistance, as I've mentioned in episode 26 on diabetes. So the Alkaline 5 diet can be thought of as a cleansing detox to reset your body and health in the short term, just like Daniel in the Bible. So in the book of Daniel in the Old Testament, Daniel requested to eat only vegetables for a while, and he looked and felt better than all the people eating meat and decadent food around him. This was a cleansing fast, and we should approach eating plant-based foods in the same way. And then finally, really to say is that the 7-point framework for optimum health, healing and weight loss in my book stays the same. This addresses the other areas alongside diet that will lead to optimum health, things like balancing sleep and rest. So if you don't currently have a copy of my book, then you're welcome to get one from my website, laurarimmer.com/book. Take a look there. There's a free chapter you can download. It's freely available in major bookshops and on Amazon, and is translated into various different languages. I know for certain Italian, Polish, German. And if you want help coaching and eating a natural diet, so full of lots of leafy greens and vegetables, these alkalizing foods, some fruits, high quality meats, dairy, nuts and seeds, in order to overcome sugar cravings, balance your blood sugar, balance your hormones, increase your immunity, prevent diabetes and potentially cancer, and lose weight quite rapidly and sustainably, then do reach out, because I offer one-to-one and group coaching programs at differing levels to suit your needs and your level of accountability and support. So we'll leave it there for today. Show notes are at laurarimmer.com/EH027. And I would just want to say here, in relation to my faith on this topic, I think that it shows God's providence in this, that my book came out on Easter Day 2015, and on 2018 Easter Day, exactly 3 years later, my podcast was released on Why I'm Not Vegan Anymore, and that caused a huge stir. It was downloaded over 2,000 times in 5 days, and I did not orchestrate that. I didn't mean for that to go out on Facebook, on YouTube. I uploaded it, and my Facebook account just populated. So I think God's hand was in that, directing that course of events. And, the timing there, exactly 3 years to the day on Easter Day, shows that that God has a plan here, I think. So that also has been a major thing in my progression with diet and health. Obviously prayer, seeking God's wisdom in the Bible and in prayer, and with my husband and with other people around me as well. And this is where God has led me. So it's an exciting development, and one that you would do well to heed as well. And if you want more information, then by all means look to the people that I've mentioned, people like Dr. Jeff Volek, Timothy Noakes, Stephen Pinney, Gary Torbs, Nina Teicholz. I'll leave their names in the show notes for you. So I'm going to leave you today with some selected verses from the book of Daniel from Scripture, Daniel 1, which is in relation to Daniel eating just vegetables that I mentioned earlier. So This is from Daniel 1 to 16 selected verses. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. Then the king commanded Ashpenaz, the chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance, and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, and to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. The king assigned them a daily portion of the food that the king ate, and of the wine that he drank. They were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of that time they were to stand before the king. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah of the tribe of Judah. But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. Therefore he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. And God gave Daniel favour and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who assigned your food and your drink, for why should he see that you were in worse condition than the youths who are of your own age? So you would endanger my head with the king. Then Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had assigned over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance and the appearance of the youths who eat the king's food be observed by you, and deal with your servants according to what you see. So he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days, it was seen that they were better in appearance and fatter in flesh than all the youths who ate the king's food. So the steward took away their food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode of Eternal Health. Have a great week, and I'll speak to you again next week. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Eternal Health Podcast. Go to laurarimmer.com to download your free Optimum Health Scorecard and find out your current health score, plus tips, coaching, and training on how to get slim, healed, and energized. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, and we'll catch you next time on Eternal Health.